Morning one.
4 o'clock in the morning, getting out of the tent to do a week. Went to come back in, crack. Day one was absolutely horrible. Just thinking back to it, I think I had about 25 or 26 what I call zingers, where it's just like the thunderbolt of pain through my knee was just horrendous.
Is it 96 Ks, Kokoda?
Welcome to the M26 FIT Podcast, where we explore the connection between having a strong mind and a strong body.
Today's special guest is Dan Holden from Holden Capital, Australia's #1 finance broker. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. Good to be here.
And you're also a published author, mate, so I'll throw that in.
Yes. I released a book about 2 years ago, and we just ticked over 1,000 sales, which is a great milestone.
Hey, congratulations. Well, let's start off on that. What was the story behind writing the book?
Yeah, so I think the story was, constantly interacting with property developers and them having a bunch of different questions and answering the same questions over and over again. I guess it was to create a resource that people could digest. It's about a 5-hour, 6-hour read, and then, kind of cover all bases at once. I guess also just to share some of the things that I've seen in my almost 20 years of doing property development and funding projects, to share some of the lessons that I've learnt, work with a pretty wide array of property developer people and the projects that they do. So I thought to share some of that into a resource would be valuable. So it was first of all out of laziness, because I got sick of answering the same questions over and over again. But second of all was to share the journey and some of the things I've learned as well.
Yeah, mate, what a great idea, giving back.
Yeah, I think so. And it also actually, funnily enough, created a lot of dialogue with people that I hadn't yet met, or people that I had met, and them sharing their stories or their horror stories, their wins. It actually created more conversations, I think, than I thought it would.
Yeah, I think it's funny, isn't it? Because particularly some of these younger blokes, and they're asking all these questions, and you can go, mate, just go and read the book.
Yeah, exactly. Now in a somewhat kind of harsh way, if I get particularly newer junior developers, if they start asking some questions, I go, mate, here's a free copy of the book. Here's one I prepared earlier, and it's kind of a nice way to kind of fob them off a bit and say, well, when you've read it and come back, then we'll talk. So it's a polite, not rejection, but a polite talk to the hand kind of thing.
All right, fantastic. And just to kick us off, give us a little short version of the Dan Holden story.
Yeah, so Brisbane, born and bred. Love Brisbane, great place, and been in the property and finance space since, I guess, 2001, so 23 years. Got a family, wife and 3 kids. Live in central Brisbane near my office. Got an office there on James Street. Obviously known yourself for a couple of years and almost 10 years, and love all things property, and recently I guess have started loving a bit of adventure, which is I guess what we're talking about today.
Absolutely. So with that adventure, I know that you were in your training for the Kokoda trek, and I was doing my Everest Base Camp training. I'm surprised we didn't bump into each other at Mount Cootha.
Exactly, yeah.
And so you completed that last year, and I think you got back just as I left to set off on mine.
I think there was only a week gap in the middle, yeah. Yep. So I did it in, I think, July or August last year, was their time where it's least rain, even though it definitely rained, is their kind of window of opportunity to get people through. So I did it, local crowd here called Peak Sports Physio and Fitness. So the 3 main adventure stuff that I've done has actually been through them. So got kind of roped in the first one. So this is the third one, Kokoda, that I did with those guys as the local organisers. And so it was 9 nights in the jungle, 10 days, start to finish, and it was definitely an adventure. So I started training, I'd say October, November the year prior. So I had a good long lead up, but probably the first, I'd say 5 months was fairly relaxed training, in a sense that I was probably doing 40 or 50 Ks a week, which sounds a lot, but it was probably more like, I'd say 5 or 6, 8 to 10 to 12 kilometre just walks every morning, not every morning, but most mornings, and just walking around my neighbourhood, which is the flats of New Farm. So it was not steep at all, but it was just getting the consistency up. And then I'd say probably, 4 months out, started putting in 1 or 2 Koothas a week, or even just like at Richmond Road there at Morningside, that, it's got a good hour and a half circuit there, not massive hills, but enough just to get you get you going. And then leading towards the end, I was probably doing, I'd say, 3 Kuta sessions a week. And the goal was to do a minimum 500 metres elevation, which is about 4 laps up Kuta. It's about 150, 170 metre incline. And so, yeah, just essentially just up and down that Kokoda stretch of Kuta, and just keep going up, keep going down, keep going up, keep going down. Good for the stability. Once I added the poles, I felt a lot more like a mountain goat. I could kind of go harder and feel confident much more confident in my balance. So the training was pretty good, and I think I did the training. If I was doing something again, I'd do it in that similar fashion, kind of ease into it, and then just go pretty hard right at the end. But just get the base level of fitness up, and just get the consistency up. And so once we got to Port Moresby, so I did do a fair bit of homework on it prior. So there was a local Brizzy guy called Glenn Azar. He hosted a podcast, and the guest on it had done Kokoda. And so I found that really interesting, because you're learning from people who have done it, who haven't done it before, and they each kind of had a little bit of a tidbit or thing that you learnt. So I actually got a really valuable out of that. I think there's probably 12 or so podcasts of people that have done it. And that was good as well, because you had people on there with, lower levels or higher levels of fitness who had done it, and they shared what they had experienced on the journey. So that was really good. I guess low lights for me, I managed to injure myself, which was day one, morning one, getting out of the tent. Sun hadn't even come up, and I fell straight onto my kneecap. I got out of the tent and I went to get back in, and it was really, really painful. Probably one of the worst things I've done. I haven't had many major injuries in my life. I reckon that was one of the worst, and I could barely walk. It was absolute hell. So the first day for me was the worst, and it was because you're doing such steep inclines, like the the Kokoda run at Kuta, it looks steep. This stuff is steeper, and it's like big segment jumps, and the downhill is the worst. I'll happily take uphill over downhill. The downhill is horrendous, and so when your knee's buggered, you're constantly using one side to get down. I was using the walking poles constantly. Some bits I had to actually just grab my porter and say, mate, you pretty much got to help carry me down this drop, this descent. Day one was absolutely horrible. And just thinking back to it, I think I had about 25 or 26 what I call zingers, where it's just like the thunderbolt of pain through my knee was just horrendous. And then the next morning I had 2 more, and then I was fine. And it thankfully recovered perfectly. I was still sore, and I was still, I guess, compensating for it, and it was still in my mind. But by the lunchtime of day 2, I was actually like, I'm good. I'm glad I pushed on.
So that was day one, and you hurt yourself. Morning one,
4 o'clock in the morning, getting out of the tent to do a week. Went to come back in, crack.
And that was day one of, is it 96 Ks, Kokoda?
I think there's differences. I think it's 96 Ks like on a map, but I think they say it's a little bit more. There's very different differences, but yeah, I think it's about 105 or 110 different people. But it's the elevation that kills you. It's just, yeah. So I'd say it would have been 10 hours a day. They had some short days. They were 9 hours, and we had some longer days. And even when you finish, often you'd loop back to go and, walk with the slower person coming through. Overall it was pretty intense, pretty amazing, very enjoyable. I think I will do it again. I've got 3 young kids. I'd love to take them on it, not for the adventure, the fitness, but probably just to see the people in the villages there, the kids in the villages. So we do 4.5 days for us at our pace to go through. For them, it's probably 2.5 day walk to get to the nearest anything, the nearest shop, the nearest village, the nearest to see a car. We don't even know what a car probably is. And it's, a totally different world. So I'd love for my kids to see that, get a bit of dose of what the other people live like. And they are the happiest kids running around, having a great time. Probably one of the highlights, one of the things that I did pick up from the podcast I listened to before was things to give to the local village kids. And so 1 or 2 of the people suggested to take kind of like stationery and little toys and stuff. So I actually got my wife and my daughter made up these little packs of pens and pencils and texters and crayons, little notepads that they could write on, stamps, and balloons. Balloons is a big one for them. They'll just sit there and blow it up and let it deflate, and it's just the highlight. So one of the ones we stopped for lunch, I gave 2 packs to each village that we stopped, and see this kid sit there for an hour just blowing up a balloon and letting it deflate. Had the best time ever. That was pretty cool, handing those out to the kids along the way. And inexpensive for us to go to Big W or Kmart and buy $100 worth of junk and package it up and then hand it out to them, and that was a real highlight doing that.
So why was the reason? What was the logic behind and the motivation for you to do that trek?
Kokoda specifically, as I said, it was my third one, and it was because Peak essentially were organising it, and I just went, I really enjoyed the other challenges. I enjoyed the lead up to the challenge, the training, doing something with purpose, and going, great, I've got to get my fitness on, I've got to get my game on and get into it. Even as annoying as it is, getting all your kit prepared, thinking everything through, all of that. I found that probably for Kokoda was, one of the challenges, because for the first probably half of the trip at least, I probably found myself spending half an hour a day or more getting all my little bits and pieces and stuff ready and to know where everything is. And I think that comes with experience, because a mate of mine who was on the trip who'd done more multi-day hikes. He was chilled out, relaxed, having a nap while I was panicking and getting more stuff together. So that was one thing I did notice. So it was probably just the Kokoda specifically was because I'd done those previously. I saw the Peak guys were going to Kokoda. I went, yep, absolutely. Probably one thing I didn't go for, but in the end ended up really appreciating, was all of the military history and dialogue that we had. So we were lucky enough. We had our main tour guide was a guy called Norm, lovely guy. He was, I think, 26 or 36 years in the Army. He'd done the Kokoda track 17 times before, and he was a walking encyclopedia of knowledge on everything Kokoda, that battle, the battles in neighbouring islands. And as I said, it was something that I didn't necessarily go there for or appreciate before I went, but it's something I thoroughly enjoyed. So we would have had more than an hour a day of just knowledge dump from him. He had ready to go voice recordings. We did 2 commemoration ceremonies. One at the I'll get the name wrong. Anyway, it's the one where all of the pollies go every for the big ceremonies and stuff, but they get helicoptered to the 2 meters away and do their thing and then leave. And so we did a proper full ceremony there, and we did another one on the top of Brigade Hill where it was kind of the last line of defence. So learning all of that stuff for me was just really an added bonus, because I didn't go there expecting much of it, or expecting that I'd really appreciate it as much as I did. So that part of it I'd say is definitely worth going with a qualified guide who can share all that knowledge with you, because I definitely did appreciate that side of it.
Yeah. How tough was it, and how did you go training wise? Would you have done anything different training wise?
Training wise, as I said, I was pretty happy with the training kind of regime that I had leading up to it. For me, consistency was more my focus than it was doing heaps of kind of vertical stuff. Probably the one thing, I reckon if you're doing, a good 5-6 hour walk every weekend, and that was what they were saying to do that I probably wasn't doing as much of. I was probably doing more, 90-minute, 120-minute, but really intense steepness.
Yep.
If you probably had more hours in the day, I'd probably say doing more longer trips, and probably even a couple of overnighters would have been where I would have probably been less stressed about all my, the things that I had in my backpack, if I had done more overnighters to know where everything is and just feel comfortable with all of that. So that's probably where my weakness actually was, now that I think about it, was all of my kit and just knowing where things are. That's probably what occupied a lot of my mind most of the days, was going, where's that again? So if I had done more multi-day hikes prior, I probably would have been more chilled about that. Overall, I think it was just more, getting the hours in the legs and just enjoying the build up to it, really. That was, as much of fun as the trip is the lead up to it. I highly recommend it. As for a highlight, definitely seeing the kids, the village kids was pretty cool. We went with there was a couple of teachers on our group, so we had 22 in our group. Interestingly, we had 68 porters. Sounds like a lot.
How many?
22 people. So they had a personal porter per person. My two mates that went were heroes and didn't have a personal porter, but they still had them there ready to go. And then all of the general porters who carry all of the, the bigger tents, all the food, just everything. So there was a heap of people there, and there's a guide at the front that you can't walk in front of, guy at the back you can't walk behind. Just get that. The way they operate all of that was amazing. The Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels, they were incredible with the stuff that they did. So it rained for a day and a half non-stop, and one of the nights that it was raining, they set up this kind of lean-to where we were. Sorry, there was one set up, and we were all crammed in there, huddled around, like going, this is adventure. And then within the space of about 20 minutes, they grabbed their axes, ran into the old machetes, ran into the jungle, chopped down about 15 trees, dragged them all back, set up a new tarp, all within 20 minutes, and we were just sitting there with a live performance, a dinner and a show. These guys just did it, and they're talking, communicating, and little things. It was amazing to see the way that they did that. There was a guy, when we're going down, I only noticed it on the final day after that rain dump, going down the hill, you see all these perfectly grooved little things to put your feet, and you go, oh, that's nice and convenient. There was actually a guy that went ahead, like half a K to a click ahead, and he would chop them with his machete, little grooves so you could put your feet. So just their operation was amazing. To see all of that, to get to know your porter, he definitely saved my life. I would have fallen about 40 times, and he caught me every time. I reckon 3 of them were pretty decent falls. If he didn't catch me, I would have been, like a good, I'd say easily 8 to 10 metre drop, and that would have been, lights out top territory. So definitely getting to know him. So they tell you they're all experienced and all whatever. After a couple of days getting to know him, it was actually learned as his first trip ever. But obviously he was born and bred in a Foggy 2, which is the village in the middle, and all of the tour guides come from that village or surrounding villages. Just getting to know those guys, and they would. One of the nice memories is when they were singing to you. So at night they'd sing, in the mornings they'd sing, and we'd do a big kind of group shout out, and kind of get the juices flowing, which is really good. I'd say that was probably the highlight. So as I was saying before, we had a couple of teachers on our crew, and so in the village in a Foggy 2, we had they asked, which isn't a normal thing, and that they got to do a tour of the school and go and meet the other teachers and get to see the kids and the setup and everything they had there. And so when the Brisbane-based teachers went into the school, they had no writing apparatus for the kids. They had no pens or pencils, no books. It was just a teacher and a blackboard, and that's how they were meant to kind of learn. So they said occasionally they'll get money given to them or whatever, and that they can go and buy some books. But obviously you can't go to the store and buy them because it's a 3-day hike to get it to the local store. When we got back to the dinner, obviously to the final dinner, all feeling a little bit, well-to-do compared to them. The group chipped in, and we actually got the peak group. We're doing another tour in 3 weeks' time. Everyone chipped in some money and went to Officeworks and bought a massive backpack full of spiral pad notepads and pens and pencils, and we paid for another porter to actually get that delivered to the Foggy 2 school. So that was pretty cool to kind of, be the instigator to see that through. So I had to go to Officeworks and buy the voucher and take it down to Peak, and the Peak guys, went and bought all the stationery, put in a backpack and sent that over there. So that was pretty cool to see, and, just to get a bit of a, it widens your lens when you see stuff like that.
Sounds like an awesome trip. And you've done a mountain biking adventure from Cairns to Cape York. You also did a trek in Nepal for your mum's 60th?
I did, yeah. So I guess starting with Nepal. So again, that's where I did my first trek, which wasn't for me. It was for my mum. She's a really likes bushwalking. So I thought, well, good 60th present for her is to take her to the mecca of bushwalking, really, which is the Mustang Valley in Nepal. So a lot of people call it the untouched kind of side, because it's on the same mountain range as Everest, but it's on like the northern side, so kind of the Chinese border side of the same mountain range. So when you're hiking, you're staring at Everest and when you come in and start and all that kind of stuff. So we did that probably 4 years ago. It was just before COVID, So you go into Kathmandu, then to Pokhara, then you fly up to kind of the starting altitude, which I think is about 2,200, 2,400, and then you essentially walk up to about 4,500, and then we did a little day trip, which was about, I think, 5,500 up to the Chinese border, which was interesting. They've got like literally gun turrets and full double fences and all this kind of stuff, and just in the middle of nowhere, just because it's the Chinese border and keeping everyone out. And so I did that, and that was really good, I guess, because it wasn't for me. I was doing it for somebody else. So I was like, yep, I'm in, I'll do it, and just kind of rocked up and gave it a crack, and I actually really enjoyed it. So it was pretty intense, though. Like we were doing, some days we're doing 1,000, 1,200, 1,400 metre elevation climbs, but then you come back down again, and then you go up again, and then come back down again.
How would you compare it to Kokoda? Which was harder?
I think probably... out of the three, the Cairns to Cape York was the hardest.
The mountain biking.
Mountain biking, yeah. Only, a very narrow second, I'd say, was Kokoda, probably, again, because of the injury that I self-inflicted, not necessarily because it's a harder challenge. I think it's just my circumstances were more of a challenge. And then I think Nepal, I wouldn't say it's the easiest, but I did a lot of training for that. And I think for me, because I was just kind of felt like a bit of a spectator, or I was just there to kind of be with mum, I just didn't really probably pay much attention to it, or probably didn't build it up much in my head. I just went, yeah, cool, I'll come along. I'd say it's probably in that order. But yeah, Nepal was really good. What I did like about that actually was on the same trip and part of the peak crew that was organised, they had a mountain biking crew that went on that as well. We'd probably every second or third night meet up with those guys and stay at the same village. They'd go a different way and we'd go a different way. That was pretty intense. Like, it's very arid. It's very, it's like a desert in the mountains. Like, there's just nothing there at all. And it's you wouldn't even call it third world. You'd call it like, it's non-civilized. There's just nothing. Like, you're in clay huts that are built by hand. There's no power. There's no hot water. There's nothing. That was definitely an experience, that aspect of it. But physically, I don't think it was extremely challenging. I think it was probably just the adjustment for me to go, right, this is how people live, and that was pretty intense. So yeah.
So what do you do personally back now in Brisbane from a physical fitness perspective? What keeps you occupied? What do you enjoy doing?
So I'm probably, I guess that's why I'm looking for another challenge to get the eyes locked in and dial in and do something. I just finished about a 3 or 4 month stint just doing boxing training with a trainer and just doing it more for fun and fitness, I guess, than anything.
So no charity fights in mind?
No, my wife won't let me. I'm keen to. My wife said, if you come home, I won't be here. So that's off the cards, and I respect that. And then, back into a bit of a weights session now. So I'll probably do a 5 or 6 month kind of weights period. I did one maybe a year ago for a good 6 months, and just kind of, that progressive overload, I think they call it, where you add more reps, then add more weights, then add more reps, and just kind of see yourself grow, and just being better than you were last week. I enjoyed that aspect of it, and I'm keen to get back into a little bit more bushwalking. So I did one last week, couple of laps of Kokoda last week with a weighted backpack, just to feel alive again. So, definitely have to lock in another big adventure so that I can really get dialed into it. Actually, interestingly, we were talking about training, and I haven't really covered off on the Cairns to Cape York one that I did. So I said it was the hardest, but I reckon I did the most training for that. But the training I did was actually on a stationary bike in my basement. So I had one of those you're on your own bike, but you plug in a flywheel and you sit there and stationary, and there's a program called I think most people use Zwift, which is like a cartoonized version. I found another one called Full Gas. And so, and the reason I know I did the most training for it is because I kind of got addicted to it. It was awesome. So I imagine a screen like bigger than this in the basement of our house, my bike sitting right in front of it. So I had a big like 75, 80 inch screen. And Full Gas is actually someone else who's ridden somewhere else in the world and got a camera on their helmet, and you ride along the same road. And so, you know, I would do Banff in Canada, see all the beautiful countryside. I'd do Lake Como in Italy. You do the Champs-Élysées. You do wherever you want in the world. Someone's uploaded a footage of that. So one that I used to do was Melbourne all the way down to along the
Great Ocean
Road. And you're doing the exact Grand Fondo that people do. But
does it make adjustments for the elevation?
Yes,
so it gets harder every time you're going up a hill?
So you can do the River Loop in Brisbane, and it goes up Kokoda, and it hurts. It really hurts. So I did that, and I haven't travelled the world much. So for me, that was my way of escaping and travelling the world. So you'd just be in a different place every morning. So you'd wake up, go downstairs, turn that on, pick a different place, and they every week they'd upload another dozen or so, because it's all user fed. So someone would go and do, you go all through England, Ireland, Scotland, like just anywhere you want. It's fantastic. I remember one that I actually quite liked was from the CBD of Sydney all the way down to Wollongong. It's about 80 kilometres. And yeah, geez, it'd knock you out. But you get to see all the countryside, and so I actually really enjoyed that. So my training for the Cairns to Cape York was actually on a stationary bike, but I loved it. Yeah.
What about nutrition? So you're fueling yourself for those events for one, but just day to day now back in Brisbane when you haven't got a goal and you're doing that training. What? Yeah,
so I'm doing, I guess, a bit of a focused stint at the moment, and I've got when I do the weights thing, I've got a online personal trainer. He's actually based in Brisbane, but we don't meet up or anything, and so he's monitoring what I'm eating, and I guess his focus is just more on the macros than it is what did you eat, and so that's good that you've got a bit of a oversight from somebody on that side of it. So yeah, I'm probably not that overly focused on the nutrition, because he's keeping an eye on it, and we kind of communicate once a week by a little chat session, or we used to do video calls. And he also sets the programs for me that I do in the gym, which again is great, because I'm not a gym guru, but I just go to the gym, I open it up, it tells me what program I do it, and he alternates it, changes it, mixes it up. He knows the equipment that I have in the gym. As I was saying before, I've got 2 different gyms, one at work and one at home. Gyms near me that I go to, and he knows the equipment there and changes it up. So yeah, I'm probably not a nutrition guru, but I am monitoring, I guess, roughly what I do.
Yep, so it's just pretty basic, and then just counting calories.
Very basic. I don't mind eating the same meals over and over again. It's probably just get it done and get on with my day more than make a big song and dance about it.
Well, it's the simplicity and the consistency behind it, though, is equally important, though, isn't it?
Yeah, good point. I think so. Actually, talking about nutrition, a bit of a segue, possibly the reason why the Cairns to Cape York was the toughest one that I did is because of the nutrition. So they had a certain amount allocated for each person each day, and I don't want to bag them, but I told them to their face. I said, mate, I was I think I was 95 or close to 100. I said, mate, I'm a ton here. You got to feed me more. And like, you're burning so many thousand calories a day. You're on the bike for 9-10 hours a day. I said, mate, you've got to feed me more. And they'll just give you here's some white bread and some mashed potato and some gravy. I'm like, starving, mate. You got to feed me more. So that was one thing that I noticed and definitely appreciate on Kokoda. You could just eat to your heart's content, and it was very basic food. So it was noodles. It was the chunky Campbell's soup in a tin, basically, with noodles, with rice, with pasta. Lunch was those biscuits. What do they call them? Sailor biscuits or whatever. It's just like kind of like a sayo, but it's like a sandwich thing. And breakfast was just oats and porridge, but you could eat as much as you want, and that's what I actually really appreciated after doing the one where you're on rations like you're in a military camp. It was like, go to your heart's content. So nutrition is, you don't think it's important until it becomes really bloody important and you're starving and hangry. And I definitely wasn't shy in telling them to feed me more. That's for sure.
I could just imagine you being a little bit angry and you've come off the bike after 10 hours and it's like, give me some food.
Yeah. Just feed me, And I understand, some people are athletes and, 75 kilos wringing wet, but that's not me, and I just think they undercalculated the group that they had on that particular one. But, amazing scenery. I'm actually looking at going back to Cairns to Cape York, but doing it on motorbike. So you're following the same roads, but instead of pedal power, it's motorbike, and you cover a bit more distance. Some mates and I are looking at doing that in the coming. It's actually already booked out this whole year. It's fully booked in advance, so we've got to look at 2025 now. But I reckon that'd be a pretty cool adventure.
Yep, bring your own caterer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll message them ahead and say. Yeah.
All right, let's sidestep into, obviously, your full-time job. You're into the property, construction, and obviously finance space, but those two come hand in hand.
Yes.
And been huge interest rates last year.
Yep.
And how are you finding that commercial finance space, people getting finance, the banks?
Yep.
How's that looking?
Yeah, so I think we had 13 rate hikes from memory. So it went from basically nil to 4.35, I think is the cash rate now. Funnily enough, in our, private lending, so we operate a lending fund to property developers. I think we went from about 7 and a bit to about 9 and a bit. So we only went up probably 250 basis points. And so the gap between bank and non-bank is now much shorter gap. In terms of getting money from the banks, it's still pretty difficult. It feels like it has been for a number of years now. Banks aren't really there to fund property developers. They're there to fund home loans. The money they get on deposit from mums and dads shouldn't really be at risk. Their main function isn't property development. It's a small part of what they do. But a lot of people think that it's their obligation or right to borrow money from the bank, but it's not really the case. I mean, you look at the banking industry and back 20 or 30 years ago, it was always done by specialist lenders who their only job is to do construction funding. And then when I think it was before the GFC, it just kind of shrunk up. And then after the GFC, it just decimated all of those specialist lenders. Property development was slower and people just pretty much predominantly went to the main banks. So at the moment, I think it's a lot more available, particularly in the private lending space, like what we do. But the interest rates have definitely, I'd say, had a medium impact. I'd say if a project feasibility didn't work at 7.5 that we were lending at, and it now doesn't work because it's 9.5, it probably didn't work anyway. So I don't think if you look at the cost of finance on a project as a slice of the pie of the total project costs, and you jump that from 7% to 9%, it shouldn't move the needle much at all. So I think it's just at the moment it's just generally challenging to get projects that do stack up. Construction prices have been the major factor. We've got massive population growth around the country, predominantly Brisbane, and we're not keeping up with that demand. So it's just going to continually keep getting worse. We had a couple of big obstacles in the last couple of years, obviously COVID being one. Everyone thought the world was going to end. Then when people realised it didn't, everyone kind of went a bit crazy on property. There was then materials, availability of materials, logistic issues, getting those materials that drove up prices dramatically. You saw some pretty hefty increases, materials going up 12 to 20% per annum. Every month there's another 1 or 2% on the cost. And then now we're in a labour shortage challenge, and we've got builders committing to multiple jobs and only giving real heartfelt effort to a few, and time delays across the board. So we're currently funding about, I'd say, 35 or 40 projects actively at the moment. I don't think we've got a single one that's on time. I don't think that's necessarily because of specifically bad management from that builder or that developer. It's just systemic from everything that's happening. At the moment it's becoming quite challenging to get a project to stack up. The other thing that we're seeing is because of the heightened cost of construction at the moment and the time delays and all these other factors, the gap between brand new product versus established. There used to be a decent gap, then it kind of sunk down. That people go, cool, that's a brand new product, but this one's only 5 years old. I'll take that one. It looks the same, it does the same. I'm happy with that. I think there's just, at the moment, you're not really seeing that premium again for the product, but whereas you need to make things work. Whereas you're also seeing, I guess, developers having to earn their stripes. So, previously you could kind of buy any piece of dirt in a metropolitan area and, whack up two things and it'd go up in value and you're a hero, right? I think at the moment it's definitely time to earn your stripes and you got to do your homework, and you've also got to take a bit more risk, because you might get a valuation of a project and the valuer says it's worth this. You've just got to have that intestinal fortitude and take that leap of faith that it's going to be worth more than that by the time you finish it. And so you've got to, do your homework. You've got to know the area really well. You've got to understand the area. And that's what I guess I get most excited about from meeting a new developer is that comes to us to fund their project, that they're doing one patch, one thing. They know it inside out. They know it intimately. They're across all of the sales in the local area, and they just live and breathe it. And to me, that's what developers need to do now. Not just pick up the prime site on a Friday and buy something that's because it's for sale. Actually be buying something because they've been monitoring it and got the finger on the pulse for quite a while. So I think it's a little bit of back to grassroots, back to earning your the money you make, which is good. I like it.
Is the Olympics having an effect, do you think?
I mean, it's funny, one event that happens in 8 years' time from now. I think it's the infrastructure spending. I think it's the certainty of jobs. I think it's the certainty that anyone. I mean, we're essentially underemployed at the moment, or overemployed, or whichever way you look at it. Pretty much anyone at the moment with a heartbeat can get a job, and from that point of view, it gives the economy certainty. It gives people comfort, and if you look at the infrastructure that is being built, it also is going to leave a nice legacy, or whatever the word will be, of a really beautiful town. I mean, it's already a great town or city, but it'll, after all of that work and all that money spent, it's going to be pretty good. I think it's a positive. I don't think it's a instant win, overnight success that I think some journos in the property space talk it up to be, but I definitely think it's having a good impact.
No, great insights, mate. And have you had a significant event in your life that's helped shape who you are, do you think?
I mean, it sounds cheesy, but I'd say family. I mean, family, I've got a wife and 3 kids, and having, since having them, it's had an impact on your life. It has an impact on things you do hour to hour, day to day, week to week. So I'd say that's been the most major impact. Another one that's not so corny, I'd probably say, is having to start my own business. So I was actually a reluctant entrepreneur. So 16th of December 2011, I had to set up a company and start my own business. And that was a massive shock. It wasn't, if you asked me a couple of weeks prior, I would have said, no, I don't have any intentions to do it. That one for me was probably a fairly significant event, in a sense that I had to go out and I didn't have to, but it was the logical thing to do. It's just that I didn't know it at the time. So, I'd say that was the one.
So obviously being in business for that many years, and we've gone through a couple of tough times, have you had what's been the most important lesson, I guess, that you've learned during your time in business?
I guess definitely having, a couple of months of overheads to pay the staff and keep the lights on, sitting in the bank doing nothing, as annoying as it is, because it is sitting there doing nothing. It also lets you sleep at night, having that buffer. And I guess just, things that I've learned in business. So for the first 5 years of having Holden Capital, I actually had a business coach. And so that was a monthly session, sit down, map out the business, map out the year ahead, setting goals. Coincidentally, pretty much all of those goals I set, we hit in terms of revenue targets, in terms of profitability, in terms of different facets of the business that we wanted to grow. So I definitely am a big fan of that in terms of that goal setting, which I'm sure everyone does at some point, but to actually sit down and have a coach and formally do it, I think was a massive impact to me and success. I guess just planning and thinking about what could go right or wrong. I mean, I guess that's the the curse of an entrepreneur is that you're always running scenarios in your head, and as long as it's not in a bad way, like an anxiety, bad, depressive, negative sense, that it's actually a positive and thinking about things. I think that's probably one key that I've and like most people probably doing that, helps you think about things hopefully before they happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think coaches I've been using in my entire life for both the sporting field and also from a business perspective, and see them to be very, very practical, and it keeps you on track, the accountability. And obviously you're still using it, that you mentioned, in your boxing and also in your fitness life. So
I'm actually, so I used that for the first 5 years. So the business has been going for 13 years now. I then changed to more a group-based kind of coaching thing, which I did for 2 or 3 years. That was called EO, Entrepreneurs Organisation. So that was interesting, but ultimately not for me. For the last probably 5 years, I've been using an accountability coach. So they're called Commit Action. They're based in America. So I dial in every Wednesday morning, 6:45 in the morning, and I have a 15-minute session with my accountability coach. And I find the difference there between a business coach who's kind of like, I guess you're spitballing ideas of what to do next. I guess at my later, 13 years in the business, I kind of know what I need to do. I just need the kick in the bum to do it. And I find that myself is not the best person to give myself a kick in the bum. And so that is relatively cheap. I think it's only $400 a month. But for me, and he'll email me the things we talked about, send me text messages, have you done this? You said you do this by this time. We'll time block things to do those important tasks. We'll have quarterly planning sessions. We'll have monthly planning sessions. We'll plan the week out, and we'll make sure that those big rocks get done so that we can, block them in and get them done, basically. And the other coach that I have and have done now for about 7 years is a life mentor or life coach, whatever. He's a little bit different. He's not kind of like your typical woo-ha, let's sing Kumbaya type of dude. He's a pretty interesting guy. Happy to share his name. His name's David Ball. He mentors only men, and mainly works around, I guess, the middle-aged men. So people that, are looking beyond the work, life balance. I guess work-life balance is probably the entry starting point for a life coach like that. And so he's definitely got me focused on quality family time, prioritising family for the right reasons, as a, blocking out the diary and making sure that they're that is not missing from your calendar, from your life. And then it also got me thinking about, what is next? What is your purpose outside of work, after work? As work doesn't become 50 hours a week and 40 hours a week and then 30 hours a week, what do you fill that time with? How to be a bit more selfish as you get a bit older with your time, that is. Just little things like this, setting challenges for yourself, going on that adventure, locking in that adventure and doing it. So, and he makes me, sets homework for me to do, read this book, do this book, make some notes, and let's talk about it next time we catch up. So he gives me recommended readings to do. A couple of my mates now go and see him as well and enjoy the time with him. Interestingly, different to the business coach where I'd talk to other people that were using that business coach, we were all doing the same thing at the same time. It was like he was reading it from a textbook and kind of, here's what we're doing this week, guys. Whereas this, so I've got 4 mates who see David Ball. All of our journeys are different because it depends on what we're, I guess, focused on at the time, or what we're needing, or also he's twice on books that I've read and gone, nothing really hit me on that one. He's like, all right, we'll read it again later. And 3 years later I read it, I go, yeah, wow, that's pretty cool. Life coach and accountability coach. Life coach, accountability coach. The 2 that I use now and have done for, I guess, 6 or 7 years, and I find that is a good balance for me. One's a kick in the ass, and the other one's widen your lens of what you're looking at. So for me, that's a good balance.
Mate, awesome, love it. Now we've got quick fire question time. You ready?
Righto.
Smartest guy you sat in a room with?
I would say it's actually a client of mine and friend, Ron. So I funded his first project for him in 2007 and still funding his projects today. Seen him grow from the first project to now being half owned by Toyota Motor Corporation, one of the biggest companies in the world. So I'd say that for me is, he challenges me. We have good interactions. stimulating conversation. So I'd say it's him.
Most embarrassing moment?
Most embarrassing moment for me is many, many years ago. This is back in, I would have been 14, so 94. And there was the second time I'd ever met my grandparents on my dad's side. And they came around to the house and I thought they were taking a photo. So they said, smile. So I stood there smiling. And then it turns out it was a video recorder. I'd never seen one in my life. So they're like, do something. I'm like, what do you mean? It's a camera. They're like, no, you've got to do something. I remember being so embarrassed. So anyway, it's not a stupidly funny one, but to me, that's my most embarrassing moment.
Favourite movie?
Good Will Hunting, definitely. I reckon I've seen it probably 100 times.
Most practical advice that you've ever heard?
Oh, I did write this one down. Let me just quickly sneak and have a look. If you want something done, do it yourself.
Biggest mistake people make in finance?
The biggest mistake generally I see in property development and finance situations is indecision. So people spend all this time and effort to get multiple opportunities or multiple solutions in front of them, and then they don't choose any of them. And then as a result, time gets away and they miss the whole opportunity. So I'd say indecision. What's
the word balance mean to you?
I'm not very good at balance, but I'd say generally it's work hard, play hard, enjoy it. Yeah.
What's one word to describe you?
I'd say loyal.
Best book you've ever read?
A great one called Constructive Finance. I'd say the one that's had the most impact would be The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. I'd read it every couple of years.
What's one item off your bucket list?
To go to Europe, so I've never been, and I'm actually taking my family this September. I guess to show them the world and see it myself as well.
What's one skill you've always wanted to learn?
My answer to this one is to be uber fit. I've had periods of being somewhat fit, but I've never actually been really uber fit. And there was something I read, I think it was on a Tim Ferriss thing, to get to 50 and never know your absolute, maximum capacity. So for me, that's my bucket list, is to get uber fit.
All right, mate, you're on the right podcast, so we'll see what we can do.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
What's your legacy? What do you want to be remembered for?
I'd say it's just being a good dad, raising the kids, helping them see the world, and growing them to be just good, confident, all-round kids. That's my thing.
What makes you laugh?
My wife. She's actually very funny, and we have great times together. She's a bit of a comedian.
What's the toughest lesson that you've ever learned?
When to stop. So I lost a sizable amount of money trying to put a project together. It got well over the $1 million mark that I burnt up in flames. And so the answer to the question I'd say is when to stop.
Ouch.
Ouch, indeed.
One thing you don't tolerate?
Laziness.
A mentor or coach that's impacted your life positively?
So I'd say David Ball, current coach that I've got and will continue to have for a long time. I'd say him. I'd say Ron, who I've worked with as a client. We have good interactions and good banter and good stimulating, thought-provoking conversation. So, yeah.
What gives you energy?
I'd say providing a good life for my kids, providing a good life for myself. That drives me.
All right, last question, question 26. Finish this sentence. I believe.
I believe I can fly. I don't know. I believe life can be good. Yeah.
Awesome, mate. Thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show. I know how busy you are. Wish you all the best for 2024, mate, and thank you.
Thanks, Magnus. Good chat.
Now, if you've enjoyed this episode, we have a small favour to ask. Please take a moment to subscribe, review, and share this podcast with someone you think will appreciate it. Your support helps us reach more listeners, and we can continue delivering content that educate, inspires, and empowers you. Don't forget to follow us on social media to stay in the loop with all our latest news. 2024 is going to be a huge year, and we'll continue running our weekly Friday morning kayaking sessions on the beautiful Brisbane River, along with plenty more thrilling adventures, exciting activities, and challenges are planned. We'd love for you to join us and be part of our growing community. Remember, success is all about consistency. And by investing 26 minutes exercising both your mind and your body every day, you too can become the strongest, fittest and healthiest version of you. So stay tuned and stay active.